I'm using this app called to show my slide in my Zoom window. And is a new app. It's in beta right now. And they really believe in having a brand name that has no vowels in it. That's part of their shtick. And so they're sticky. We can remember their name because nobody here is going to forget it because it's such an odd name. But if the founder had it his name, this is my app. You can get, I can't remember his name, Jason something. If you want to get Jason's app, then who's going to remember that? So what we're going to talk about today is the advantages and the disadvantages of business and personal brands. And I'm guessing that a lot of people here, you came here because this is a question that you struggle with. And so I'd like to know, what kind of brand do you have? There's a poll here in Zoom, and I'd like you to pick one of these answers. Do you have a personal brand or a business brand or both? Which one do you have? Okay, I'll give you about 30 more seconds to answer the poll and let me know which kind of brand do you have. Do you have a personal brand, a business brand, or both? Okay. Can everybody see the poll? Is that coming up for you?
Not yet.
It hasn't come up yet?
Uh-uh.
Well, that is bizarre because it says the poll is live.
The poll came up, but not the results.
Ah, okay. Well, I'll go ahead and end the poll and relaunch it here. Sorry about that. Zoom is super fun with technical difficulties. Can you see the poll now?
Not the results.
Not the results. Well, the results aren't coming up. It's showing me that nobody's voted. Okay. So we're going to...
We keep voting.
We could answer in chat.
Yeah, let's do it in chat. Great. Eleanor says both in chat. What about the rest of you? Go ahead and type it in chat and let us know. Do you have a personal brand, a business brand, or both? Got some personal brands, lots of personal brands. Great. Well, we're going to talk about some specific advantages of personal brands in a little bit. But first, I want to know, what do you think a brand is? How would you define a brand? Type it in chat. Let me know what you think a brand is. How do you define a brand? An identity? Yeah? How else can you define a brand? A label? Yep, the way we think about brands has evolved over time. Our personal identity of what we represent. I like that, Valerie. That's really good. Recognized by people. I think that's key, Mark. A reputation identity flavor recognized by people. It's when people recognize it that the brand has power. Now, the way that a brand originally started was it was a symbol that was seared into the side of a piece of livestock. It said, I own this piece of property. And by owning that piece of property, everybody knew that it was yours. But brands have evolved beyond this. It's not just a symbol to say, this is mine. Brands now represent something completely different. The big questions your brand needs to answer are, who are you? What do you do? And why does it matter? And so I'd like to send us into breakout rooms right now. We're going to go into pairs, and I'd like you to answer this question. Who are you? What do you do? And why does it matter? Okay? I'll go ahead and I'll paste those into chat so that if you forget, come back to chat and you can remember. These are the questions that we're going to answer. You're each going to have 1 minute, and we're going to go in alphabetical order. So the person whose first name comes first in the alphabet is going to go first, okay? I'll see you back here in 2 minutes. So this is the part that's recorded, not the breakout rooms. I always like doing a little dance here to let people know watching on the replay that, yay, you get this special time. And I used to play music and do dances, but YouTube started hitting me with copyright complaints. So I'm not doing that anymore. Hi, thanks for joining us. Everybody's in breakout rooms right now, and they're gonna come back in 40 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So what they're doing in their breakout rooms is they're answering this question. So let me ask you, Daph, who are you? What do you do? And why does it matter?
Okay, I'm Daphne. I'm a teacher. I teach English here in Mexico City in grade school. And I also like to run, and I study online as well. What does it matter? Why does it matter? It matters because I matter. And people around me matter also. That's why. How about you?
Great. Great. Well, I'll get into my whole thing in a little bit and tell you all about who I am and what I do and why it matters. Welcome back, everyone.
Great. All right.
All right. So I hope you had some good...
I attended one of your meetings like a month or two ago.
Oh, great. Great. Well, it's good to see you again. Thanks for coming, Daphne.
The Zoom tips you gave, something like that.
Great. Great. Well, what we're talking about today, a lot of this material comes from The Brand Gap, which is written by a gentleman named Marty Neumeier. And his book is about the gap between branding and strategy. And when we feel adrift on our personal brand, on its relationship to a business brand, about how we show up in the world, a lot of times it's because we're not examining this gap. We're leaving too much distance between our brand and our strategy. And Marty Neumeier says a lot of great things in this book. He says, for most of us, brand happens while we're doing something else, that it's incidental to the work that we do, and it just kind of happens. He also says a brand is not what you say it is. A brand is what they say it is. He also says brands result from the interaction of thousands of people over a long period of time. And he says branding is simply a convenient package for a business idea. And I think this final point, this is why we struggle with personal brands. Because to have our personal brand be a package for a business idea, it feels like that we're ignoring all these different facets of our personality. Because we're more than just our business ideas. But when you create a personal brand, you have to distill everything about you into this packaged essence that's used to promote your services and your products. And there's a natural conflict that we come into with that. And I'll talk about how to navigate this conflict through the agenda today. This is the agenda of our masterclass. We're going to talk about the advantages and the disadvantages of personal brands versus business brands. We'll talk about what your audience really wants from you. I'll share some case studies of people who successfully manage a personal and a business brand at the same time. We'll go through the 7 criteria for good brand names, and I'll share an easy personal branding kit. So everybody who said, yes, I have a personal brand, then you're going to like what I have to share here at the end. I'm also going to share a personal branding checklist with you. I had sent it out in the email notifications earlier, but I'm also going to pop a link here in the chat box. So if you haven't seen this personal branding checklist yet, there's 24 actionable items here that you can use to increase your personal brand. And if you're watching this on the replay, there should be a button somewhere nearby where you can download it. So I think about this a lot because I manage 2 brands. There's my personal brand, Caelan Huntress, and then there's my business brand, Stellar Platforms. And Stellar Platforms is my digital marketing agency. That's where I keep my portfolio. That's where my shopping cart is. So if people buy things from me, it typically goes through Stellar Platforms. But not many people buy what I sell because of the Stellar Platforms brand. They buy what I sell because of me, because of my personal brand. And so whenever I post something, I have to think, is this going to be under my personal or my business brand? Because there's advantages and disadvantages to both, right? And we'll go over some of those now. In The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, he talked about this prevalent myth of becoming an entrepreneur. And he uses the example of someone who's a great baker. She's marvelous at baking and everybody loves what she bakes. And they tell her, you should start a business and start your own bakery. And so she does. And then she has to deal with payroll and lease agreements and managing people. And she's doing all of these things outside of her craft that got her into the business game in the first place. And so what a lot of typical business advice says is that you should create a separate entity for your business brand and then grow it and systematize it to the point where it doesn't need you anymore. And you could sell it to somebody else. You have what they call a successful exit. You build a business brand in order to distance yourself from the brand. But there's another point of view that I really like in this book called The Thought Leader's Practice. Oh, sorry about that. Technical difficulties. There we go. So this book, this was the best business book I read in 2019. And they work with people who make a living by selling their expertise, by monetizing their ideas. And what they say is that if you are a personal brand, then you have the same advantages as a lawyer's practice or a doctor's practice, where people buy your expertise because of you. With a business, they say, don't trade time for money. You want to build systems that bring you revenue without your active involvement. But with a practice, they say, yes, trade time for money, because you can charge a premium for that if you have a lot of expertise. But if a lawyer had on his door, the Ambulance Chaser Incorporated, people aren't really going to bond with that brand, but they'll bond with a person, because people trust people, but they hesitate to trust businesses. So for business brands, they have this definite advantage. You can create an asset and sell it to somebody else and exit the company. You can outsource the work to other people so that you don't have to do it. And you have this intermediary between yourself and the public. So if the public wants to sue your business, they sue that entity. That's a buffer in between your personal brand and the public. And so those are some great advantages. But according to a study done by Nielsen, they found that 92% of business-to-business buyers were more likely to trust a salesperson if they also had their personal brand. If a salesperson says, my business can get you all these things and it's going to be great, people don't trust that. But if someone who has their own personal brand says, I stake my reputation on this, this is going to be great because I said so. 92% of buyers will trust a salesman who has their personal brand. People trust people, but they hesitate to trust businesses. And this is one of the biggest disadvantages to a business brand, is that people inherently distrust a corporate logo. It's more likely that people will cancel, that you'll experience churn. But if you're a personal brand, it's a lot harder to cancel that service from your buddy Joe than it is to cancel the service from Quality Homes Limited. And then there's this other disadvantage that a lot of businesses have been running up against over the last 10 years. It's really hard to build a following as a brand. As a matter of fact, if you share a brand message on social media, it's 24 times more likely to be reshared if a person shares it. If a brand shares it, people don't trust businesses. People trust people. And this is one of the big advantages of a personal brand. No matter what you're working on, you accumulate brand equity. As you pivot through different projects, your audience comes with you from project to project. So you're not limited by the niche of your business brand. You can transition from one thing to another. I've got people on my newsletter list from 15 years ago who knew me as a car insurance agent. And then I started propping up business brands. I had a web design agency in Costa Rica. I had a couple different web design agencies. I took a couple different paths, and I've been doing stellar platforms for 3 or 4 years. But my audience has a much longer tail. And some of them have been on my list for more than a decade. But what I really like about a personal brand is that when you share your personal life, those quirks about yourself become business marketing. I've been doing a lot of live streaming lately, not to share marketing advice, but to share how I take self-care. And I take juggling breaks where I juggle bouncing balls, or I take a guitar break and I play guitar for a little bit, or I do Qigong, this movement and stretching meditation. And I've had people contact me and say, hey, I saw your Instagram story where you're juggling. That was really cool. We should talk about that coaching program. And so just by sharing my personal life, it gives those soft touches, those 11.4 touches that are necessary to make a sale, just by sharing my personality. So what do you share? Go ahead and write down right now 2 things that you could share personally that would increase your engagement with your audience. What could you share that would deepen your relationship with your audience? What are the aspects of your personality that people find interesting? Personal brands have disadvantages too. The biggest disadvantage is that it requires your active time and involvement. If you stop working, your personal brand starts deflating. Over time, your personal brand could lose all value if you stop showing up publicly. And then I've heard from lots of people that if you pivot from project to project, it confuses your audience. Personally, these disadvantages don't bother me because I like the work that I do and I like showing up. And if I confuse people who knew me as a car insurance agent 15 years ago, they can unsubscribe from my list and good riddance. But there's some people who think it's very adventurous, the kinds of pivots that I've gone through in my life. And so marketing that personal aspect to my brand, I find it to be a big advantage. There's 3 big factors with your brand. There's you, there's your business, and there's your audience. And we're going to look at these through 3 different lenses: your message, your offers, and your work. And if we create a matrix out of these, this can provide us with a clue as to which brand would be a better match for you. If you're more interested in the vision, if you provide services, if you think of yourself as a crafts person, then a personal brand might be better. But if you're focused on the mission, on how you can change the world, if you have products that you sell instead of services that you provide, if you're focused more on the delivery to the customer instead of the craft of how it's made, then maybe a business brand would be better for you. But no matter which you choose, you have to pay attention to how the audience interacts with your brand. They don't care about your vision or your mission. They care about solutions to their problems. They learn about you through advertising, whether you're a personal brand or a business brand that's advertising. And many times they don't care about how it's made or what you do. They care about the outcome that they get. So look at your brand through these lenses, and it might give you some clues as to which would be better for you. We often see this in an elevator pitch. An elevator pitch is a concise, distilled statement that's rehearsed, that lets people know who you are, what you do, and why you're amazing. And I'm going to share with you the best elevator pitch I've ever heard in my life. You ready? I met a guy at Pioneer Nation in 2015, which was a conference for people who make their livings from their laptops. And his name was Corey Huff. And I said, hey, who are you? What do you do? And he said, I help artists sell their work online. It was sticky, clear, and short. 7 words in this elevator pitch. And I immediately knew what he did and who he served. If I was in his target market, I would have said, oh my gosh, we need to talk. But instead I said, oh my gosh, I know lots of people that you should talk to. And he has a business brand. At theabundantartist.com, he helps artists sell their work online. But he's pivoted from that project a number of times. And so the brand Corey Huff is still out there doing other things. And he tends this business brand on the back burner when he needs to. Your elevator pitch should be hard to forget, hard to complicate, and hard to interrupt. If it's easy to remember, easy to understand, and easy to endure, then you'll have a solid elevator pitch. We call these elevator pitches because the typical length of an elevator ride in New York City is 118 seconds is the average. And so in that length of time, you should be able to convey to somebody who you are, what you do, and why you're amazing. So here's the formula underneath Corey's elevator pitch. I help these people dealing with this problem by this solution. Popping this into chat for you so you can copy and paste this. And I actually want us to practice this. We're going to go into breakout rooms. I'm going to split you into pairs, and you're going to share your elevator pitch with your partner. Okay, breakout rooms. Here we go. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. This time the person with the shortest hair goes first. Okay? So turn on your cameras to show people how long your hair is, or just say how long it is. And I'll see you back here in 2 minutes. Another breakout room break. Which means I have to reboot my camera so they don't see it, but you saw it. Turns out that digital cameras, if they're not specifically video cameras, then they stop working after 30 minutes because they're taxed differently. Video cameras are taxed one way, and still cameras, which this DSLR is a still camera that has video capabilities, turned out it has this hard cutoff in the firmware that I can't get around. I can't find a firmware hack. So I'm just stalling right now. Hey, Eleanor, welcome back.
I came back because my person isn't there. So I was just alone in my breakout room.
Oh, well then, why don't you tell me about your elevator pitch?
Is it, Valerie, are you back? She keeps freezing. Mine is, I help sex positive people fall in love, get laid, and have fun.
Nice. That's tight. I like that.
Thank you.
Sticky, clear, and short. Well done. Great. Valerie, if you're able to, looks like you might be having some connection issues. Can you share with us your elevator pitch?
We can hear you now.
Yeah, except I keep sticking. My computer isn't working.
Oh, sorry about that.
So I help people be playful with jewelry and not take it so darn seriously.
Nice. Oh, I like that. That's really good. Great. Welcome back, everyone. So elevator pitches are really useful because we can distill our essence. But what I want you to think about now is your elevator rant. And it's not the rant that you give. It's the rant your customer gives. If you were in an elevator for 2 minutes with one of your customers, what would they rant about? Write it down in the chat box or write it on a piece of paper. What 2 topics would they rant about to you? What grinds their gears? What makes them really pissed off? What people rant about is a clue. If you can address what they're ranting about, then they're going to come to you to solve their problems. Because the topics of these rants, these are the pain points that people need addressed. Gosh, first dates, such a big pain point. Helping people get through a first date, that's a painkiller. Your brand components are your position, your presentation, and your point of view. If you can situate your rant around these three components, the point of view you take in your industry or in your market, the position that you take in relation to your competition, and the presentation of your brand, the colors and the fonts and how you look, how you present yourself. These three circles, these make up your brand. So let's talk about the name of your brand. According to our friend Marty Neumeier, there are 7 criteria for a good name. And he uses the jam Smuckers as an example. I like saying it, Smuckers. And when I say it, you know exactly who I mean. I don't mean the auto parts store. I don't mean the freelance web designer. I mean the jam. Smuckers means nothing else other than the jam. They have owned their brand word because they meet these 7 criteria for a good name. It's distinctive, it's short, it's appropriate, it's easy to spell and pronounce, you like saying it, you can extend it into different product lines, and Smuckers can protect it. Nobody else can use the word Smuckers, but the Smuckers family and the Jam Company. So does your brand name meet these 7 criteria? Now, a lot of us who have personal brands, we don't meet this criteria. My name's hard to spell. And the reason why I originally started down the business brand path was because it's very difficult for me to say, go to caelanhuntress.com/anything, because everybody's going to spell my name right. My personal name does not meet the 7 criteria. So I created a business brand that does meet all these criteria. And so if your personal name doesn't meet these criteria and you want a good name, you can create a business name that does. Mike Rosica has the same difficulty. Rosica is a difficult name to spell and to pronounce, but his business brand is Young Architect. People in his target market, they look at his brand and the right people say, that's me. I'm a young architect. I'm a part of that. It's very easy for them to identify with his business brand. And so I'm going to go into a deep case study on what Mike has done with his personal and his business brand so that we can see how to balance the both of them. He's got a couple of different products. What Mike does is he helps architects pass the ARE exam. And the architecture registration exam is this huge exam that young architects have to pass after they've graduated from architecture school. They graduate from school, they get a diploma, but they're not licensed to practice architecture until they complete a series of difficult exams. And so what he did is he wrote a book called How to Pass the Architecture Registration Exam. And he also put together a boot camp, a study group for cohorts of students to study for these exams together. And what Mike did is he said, okay, I've got a pain point with people who don't know where to start. And that's what the book is for. And his book helps people who are trying to figure out, where do I start with this? After they learn from the book and they see what a consistent advocate that Mike is for the young architect community, and they see his posts on social media and how much he loves his dog, they fall in love with Mike. And so the vitamin at the end of it, you should join my study group. They don't join the study group because of the business brand. They join the study group because of the personal brand. If Mike flipped these and he tried to go to the market and say, what you really need is a study group, it would be a tough sell. Just like vitamins are a tough sell. Yes, vitamins are good for you, but it takes a whole lot of education to teach people why they need it. People are much more likely to buy a painkiller when they have a present pain right now and they want to fix it. And that's what Mike's book is for. His book says, hey, you don't know where to start with this? I'll show you what you need to do to study for these exams. And after people read his book, they realize there's a lot more here than I thought. I really need a cohort of peers to work through this material with me. I really need Mike telling me what I need to study week in and week out. And that's what people buy from him. Young Architect gets people in the door at the top of the funnel. And at the bottom of the funnel, they buy Mike. And they join his study group because they like his personal brand. Alan Matthews does the same thing. He's got a difficult name to spell. Alan Matthews, 2 L's, 1 T, lots of ways to spell that wrong. And if his website was alanmatthews.com, come and let me be your classical guitar tutor, he might be able to get a few people in his geographic location to hire him to teach them classical guitar. But what he did is he made a business brand for Classical Guitar Shed. And he works with people who are learning classical guitar and they want to get better at it. His lead magnet's a Painkiller. It's how to learn any classical guitar piece in 7 easy steps. When Classical Guitar Shed brings that forward, then somebody who doesn't know Alan at all and has never seen anything from him, they can clearly identify what problem he solves. After people are in his funnel for a while, they see that he has lots of video tutorials. How to practice sight reading on guitar is not a pain point. Classical guitarists aren't trying to figure out, how do I learn sight reading? They're trying to discover the guitar tablature for specific difficult pieces. And so he makes individual lead magnets under the brand name of Classical Guitar Shed that talk about how to play these individual pieces. And then he sells his membership site. His membership site is full of video tutorials of him demonstrating how to play all of these brilliant pieces. And after people have been in his funnel for a while, they join the membership site because of Alan's personal brand. It's under the umbrella of his business brand. And the business brand interacts with the public when they're strangers. By the time they become customers, they do it because of Alan's personal brand. So when you offer a painkiller, it gives you an opportunity to build the know, like, and trust in the marketing cycle. So that by the time that people get to the bottom of your funnel, they're ready to take your vitamin. That education process of what the vitamin is, why they need it, and why it's important, that takes time. And if you create a content funnel from painkiller to vitamin, you can spend that time educating your customer on how to do business with you. So now let's get into the nitty-gritty of how to make a personal brand. And I'm going to make it super easy for you. You need these 3 things. You need a logo, an email address that's branded to you, and a color palette. If you have these 3 things, then you've got a personal brand. Logos are actually really easy. This is a simple formula. Pick a font, make one of your names bold. If you want extra credit, you can throw in a color. You might see a personal brand logo on this screen that follows this same formula. And now that I've shown it to you, you're going to see it everywhere. This is the simplest and easiest way to create a logo out of your name. Pick a font, make one of the names bold. That's it. And once you have that as your logo, you can use it anywhere and everywhere. If you're still using Gmail or Hotmail or AOL as your email address, people aren't going to take you seriously. But there's a credibility that comes with having your name at yourname.com. And the typical way to do this is your first name at your full name.com. And if you want to email me, you can decipher my email address because it's right there. And when I send people emails with that email address, it says that I'm set up enough to have a brand outpost online. You don't have to have a full website there. It can just be a redirect to your LinkedIn profile or your Facebook page. And setting up an email address can be tricky. In the personal branding checklist, I have a link to a blog post that gives a tutorial. It's not my blog post, somebody else wrote it, but it goes through some specific easy steps that you can use in order to create your own email address at your own domain. This website I use all the time. It's called coolors.co. It's not colors, it's coolors. And when you go to coolors, you can start with any 5 colors. And you hit the space bar and it changes all 5 of those colors. When you find one you like, you lock it. And then hit spacebar again, and then the 4 other colors all change to random colors that match that one. And so when you find 2 colors, you do 3 random ones that match. And when you find 3 colors, you do 2 random ones that match until you get the color palette that represents you and your brand. And this is my color palette. That middle blue, you'll notice it's the same one that's in my personal logo. The first 2 are my Stellar Platforms brand colors, and everything I do with that brand has those 2 colors in it. So when you have a palette, then you can get this link that Coolors gives you, and I have an example down below my colors, and this link has the hex codes of your palette divided by dashes. So anytime you're creating anything, you can just go and copy that hex code to get the exact precise color that matches your brand. For extra credit, after making all of these, oh, I missed it, did I? No, I didn't. Great, this is extra credit. You make a page on your website at yourwebsite.com/brand. And on that page, you put these 3 things. You put your logo, your email address, and your color palette. And then if you ever want to hire somebody to design anything in the future, you hire a designer on Fiverr, or you find somebody on Upwork and you say, hey, make this brochure for me, or make this YouTube thumbnail for me, and you give them this link, then they can immediately do it with your fonts and your colors. As Paul Rand reminds us, design is the silent ambassador of your brand. So what's your ambassador saying about you? When your brand goes out to the public, is it giving a good impression or a bad impression? The best impressions help you move up this ladder. This is a ladder of brand impact. And up at the top, the brands that are eponymous, that are so prevalent that they're generic, those are brands like Kleenex and Band-Aid, where the name of the brand actually means the category. The leader brand is the one that dominates its competition, but it hasn't quite reached eponymous yet. And there's some interesting debate around, is Coke a leader brand or an eponymous brand? In some cultures, saying give me a Coke means give me a soda, and it could be Sprite or Pepsi or Diet root beer or anything. But in other cultures, a Coke means that specific Coca-Cola brand of soda. And soda is the name of the category. And so I find it interesting to watch how some brands kind of dance on this line between being eponymous and being the leader. What personal brands really want to get to is being positioned to where you're sticky in the prospect's mind. When somebody hears, oh, you're having dating problems, you need to talk to Eleanor O'Brien, because your brand has stuck. And people who have met you 2 or 3 years ago, they remember because of your brand positioning what it is you represent. The base level of branding is just to be present, to show up and say, this is what I do. And that, I feel like my Stellar Platforms brand, it's present. It's clear. You can look at it and kind of figure out, oh, he helps people with platforms shine, I guess. Actually, now that I'm talking about it, Stellar Platforms is probably a muddled brand because it's unclear. You can't look at the brand and figure out what it does. So where are you on this ladder? Go ahead and type it in chat and let me know, where are you on this ladder? And if you don't want to share with everybody, you could just do a private chat to me and let me know, do you have a positioned brand, a present brand, or a muddled brand? Sticky. Yeah, I think you're right, Eleanor. Yeah, I think that is right. Yep, definitely clear. So how do we move up this ladder? How do we elevate our brand? Well, I like to look at the platform. And part of the reason my brand is muddled is because you can use this word platform in a lot of different ways. The way that I use it is if you have something to say and something to sell, you have a platform. And platforms go through 4 different levels of elevation. The lowest level of a platform is the soapbox. And anybody who has something to say can get up on their soapbox and say it. There might not be many people paying attention to you, but you can get on a soapbox just by saying things. It's not until you have something to sell that your platform becomes a showroom. In a showroom, your communications are focused around the things you have on offer, and these are the things you can buy from me. Showrooms are for selling, but showrooms have a ceiling. You can only fit so many people into a showroom. And that's why what a lot of people like to do is set up the systems so that they can get on the stage. When your platform is at the stage level, all you have to do is get in front of your audience, share your wisdom, and shine your light, and your systems convert strangers into customers automatically. There's a 4th level of platform at the stadium. I don't do a lot of work on the stadium level because if you're Beyonce, you need a team of people just focused on that one brand. And I like working with lots of different brands and lots of different clients. So my specialty is helping people move from the showroom to the stage. When they've got something to sell and they want to systematize how they sell it and what they say when they show up in the world, that's where I find the work really exciting. So how do you raise your platform through these levels? You focus on the cornerstones. There are 4 cornerstones to every platform. There's what you say and what you sell. And we could call these the external cornerstones. These are the cornerstones that people see when they look at you. But there are these 2 internal cornerstones that are just as important to your platform. And those are your strategy and your systems. We could call these cornerstones on the left the visionary cornerstones, and these cornerstones on the right the practical cornerstones. If any one of these cornerstones is weak, if it's lower than the other ones, then your platform will always be tilted. That weak cornerstone will always be dominating your attention, and you have to go over there and fix things. So which cornerstone is weakest for you? Type it in the chat box and let me know which cornerstone repeatedly demands your attention. Which one, if you were able to bolster it, to raise that cornerstone, it would raise your entire platform. Is it your strategy? Is it your systems? Systems in all caps for Eleanor. Is it what you say or is it what you sell? Mark says selling and systems. Yep. Yep. If you have 2 cornerstones weak, then it'll roll you right into the audience. The good news is bolstering these cornerstones can be done. And I'm going to give you a case study about each one to show you how to do it. First, let's look at strategy. I was working with Lisa Garr, the host of The Aware Show. See that branding? Lisa Garr, host of The Aware Show, personal brand, business brand. There is no Aware Show without Lisa Garr. She's been hosting a radio show on KPFK for more than 10 years, a nationally syndicated radio program where she focuses on a really specific niche. She interviews book authors in the fields of neuroscience, consciousness, and spirituality. And anytime any authors in this niche have a new book to promote, they go onto Lisa's show for an interview. And she'd been doing audio interviews on a radio station for a long time, but what she really wanted was to have her own video show. And so we looked at her strategy and we said, okay, if you want a video show, then let's leverage your skills to create something that can demonstrate what you're capable of. And so we made a 10-day Neuro Summit. And we invited 10 of her best guests, all themed around a topic, and we sold those guests books and programs. And this was back in 2015 when summits were still relatively new, and they generated a lot of excitement. We did a lot of list growth. We made a bundle of revenue on it. But most importantly, what we were able to do is to demonstrate what Lisa was capable of with a video show. Before she worked on her strategy, all she had was an audio show and a pitch. And she could go to networks and say, I would be really good at this. But instead, we did a series of video telesummits in 2015 and 2016 so that she was able to shop around what she had already created. And now she's got a video program on Gaiam TV. By focusing on her strategy, she was able to elevate her platform. Now, I know a lot of people get kind of scared of systems, but I love systems. I look at something like this and I think it's time to play. And I was working with a New York Times bestselling author, and he wanted to build a business brand and make an evergreen webinar. And so I pulled out my templates and started writing the emails and designing the pages. And then I said, you know, right here, right at this spot, after somebody's watched your webinar, they've bought your product, they've seen the thank you page, and we send them this welcome email. What if we also invited them to join an affiliate program? So that if they shared that top of funnel link for your webinar registration, then we can bake in some viral sharing. And that way, people are automatically promoting his offer without his active involvement. It's the systems that are set up to run his business in the background so that he can focus on doing his best work. I actually got started in digital media by focusing on what to say. I was a copywriter for magazines 20 years ago, back before there were blogs, and spent a lot of my time honing my craft as a copywriter. And so when people say, I don't know what to say here, I get really excited because I find that problem easy and fun to solve. And I was working with Lee Holden, who's a Qigong teacher, and he runs an acupuncture clinic in Santa Cruz. And we had packaged together these healing meditations that he had done. It was an audio program with different tiers, and people could buy 1 or 3, and we designed the sales page, and it was great fun. But he said, I can't get on stage and just say, buy my program. That doesn't feel authentic to me. He was on some big name conferences where people, high level conferences like Mind Valley would have him come in and talk to thousands of people in the middle of the conference day. And he would do these breathing and stretching exercises to help people get invigorated and energized. And it introduced them to what he teaches with Qigong. And so we said, why don't you say, join my free 5-day mini course? So you're not selling from the stage. You're simply saying, hey, if you liked this, you can have some more for free. Just go to this URL and you'll get 5 free daily videos of 7 minutes apiece, taking you through 7 easy routines. And then if you like it, you can upgrade to the paid 30-day mini course, or you can buy this guided meditation healing package. And by setting up the systems behind him, we were able to curate his message so that all he had to do was share his evergreen call to action. If you like this, then you can you can get my free 5-day mini course. And that statement of what he says, he can use again and again, and it's in harmony with his brand and his values. Now, I spent a lot of time in sales, so I feel comfortable in the sales mindset. And I know that this is where a lot of people get edgy, because there's we get into imposter syndrome. We get into a lot of, should we even be selling here? But I find with selling is we just have to find the right point to introduce it. I was working with a Hall of Fame public speaker, and we had made this 16-week video course together, and he was having problems selling it to his client base. And so I said, when are people the most excited and enthusiastic about working with you? And he said, well, it's right after I get off stage. He has, Mike Rayburn has this overlap of motivational speaking, comedy, and acoustic guitar. And he plays these mashups. There's nobody on stage like this guy. And he would come into an organization, talk to 5,000 people, get a standing ovation, and he would come off stage. And then his contact would say, Mike, that was amazing. They loved you. And then he handed them the brochure. And he said, great, if you think this is awesome, we're gonna keep this going for 16 more weeks. Here's the brochure. Here's what I can do for them after this. So that we created a selling process that made it easy and successful. And so this is the kind of work that I do with my clients, is I help them raise their cornerstones, because the higher your cornerstone gets, the higher your platform gets. You can stand on a soapbox and reach a dozen people. You can create a showroom and reach a few dozen. But getting to the stage where you can reach hundreds at a time, that's where the fun really starts. That's when you can start focusing on what you want to do in the world rather than how to make it happen. So I want to go over the agenda real quick. We're 5 minutes before the top of the hour. I just want to make sure we touched all the bases. We've talked about the advantages and the disadvantages of personal and business brands. We've talked about what your audience really wants from you. It's what they rant about. I've shared some case studies of personal brands versus business brands. We've talked about the 7 criteria for a good brand name. And I've given you an easy personal branding kit in the personal branding checklist. And there's a bunch of other tips in there on how to increase your personal brand. And for those of you who've watched this far in the presentation, I want to give you an extra bonus, which is a 45-minute platform assessment. And this is when I take a look at your platform and your cornerstones and give you some advice on how you can elevate your platform. This is a free call. It's not a sales call. It's talking about you. And I do require that you fill out a form before this call. It'll take you 10 to 15 minutes, but it'll give me a groundwork of what you're working on right now so that I can come to our conversation prepared with ideas. And I'll share those ideas with you as best I can. And if I think that you're a good match for my 3-month program, I'll offer a second call. And during that second call, that's where I'll tell you about my coaching program. And my technical difficulties are free of charge. So this 3-month program, it focuses on each cornerstone in turn. And every week you get homework. I'm going to give you a workbook that focuses on elevating one of your cornerstones. We're going to work on what you say, what you sell, your strategy, and your systems. And these cornerstones, by elevating them higher, this is what's going to raise your platform. I've been doing this work for a long time, and the reason why I like working with so many different people is because it gives me a perspective on what's working in a lot of different industries. I've worked with Fortune 500 companies. I've worked with mom and pop solopreneurs. I've worked with a lot of people, and I've learned that if you're doing the same old thing, you're gonna get the same old results. And through working with a coach, you can have those preconceived notions challenged, where you can learn that the way that you've always been doing things might not be the only way to do them. And that's what I really love to do. And so if you go to caelanhuntress.com/call, you do have to spell it right. So if you're watching this on the replay, there is a link nearby. But if you are here in the live presentation, I'm just going to go ahead and drop a link here into chat so that you can open that in another window. And I'd love to talk with you about your platform. Because when I work with people on their platforms, I get to help them systematize their business so that they can make more authentic choices about how they spend their time. And that's really what I like to do, is I like to help entrepreneurs make more intentional lifestyle choices through setting up a business that supports them automatically. So we're at the top of the hour. Thank you so much for attending. I'm going to stick around for a few minutes for Q&A if anybody would like to have a chat. But if you have to hop off, thanks so much. And it's been great having you.